Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's video, and I hope your day has gone well. So, today, we're reading 3 strange disappearance stories. And before we start, what is your favorite fall time food? Comment down below. And with that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. When I was 18, I came in contact with Elijah, who stole cars for a small profit. The thing is, I didn't have a job, and I sure as hell couldn't go to my parents for money, so I started joining him on these ventures. He must have been at least 15 years older than me. We met at night, and would circle big parking lots trying to score a car. We were fairly successful for about 2 years. One night, we were both able to score a car and were celebrating in a bar. It was then that Elijah told me he knew of a job, but it wasn't going to be our usual MO. "If we play it right, it'll be an easy score," he told me while chugging his beer. "All we have to do is break into some old dude's place and steal a painting." My curiosity rose up, and in a hushed voice, I asked him, "How much would this painting be worth?" He let out a small chuckle and lowered his voice to a whisper. "Millions, my friend." I don't consider myself a greedy person, but the thought of making millions in one night was enough to get me to agree. "The painting was rumored to be destroyed long ago. Currently, it's in the possession of an old man on the outskirts of town," he whispered. Looking back on this all, I should have asked more questions. But the thought of making millions in one night was enough to make me forget all reasoning. Curse our foolish minds for ever thinking we were going to find such riches without paying a price for it. 2 nights later, I was waiting in the parking lot where we'd meet, lighting a cigarette. Judging by the condom wrappers and needles lying around, we weren't the first to realize this place was abandoned. My cigarette was almost fully smoked when Elijah arrived. "Why did you bring your car?" He just looked at me and shrugged. "How else are we transporting the painting, huh?" Guess he had a point there. After we reviewed the plan one last time, we decided it was go time. We would go in and find the old man's bedroom, where I would stand guard making sure the old geezer wouldn't wake up, while Elijah searched the house. He promised me there would be no violence involved whatsoever. Worst case scenario, if the man woke up, I would tell him not to move, and if anything went wrong, we'd just rush out of there. It was about a 5-minute walk from the lot to the old man's house. We walked in complete silence. There was an uneasiness in my gut already, as if I subconsciously knew what was going to happen inside of that house. We got to the house and climbed the front gate. This wasn't a house as much as it was a mansion, though. I kept thinking to myself that I wouldn't even find the bathroom in a house like this, much less the painting. Elijah got the front door open in almost no time. The entrance hall was as big as my entire apartment. We took out our flashlights and scoured the place. The man was an art lover indeed, as the hall was filled with many paintings. They went from giving me a slight uneasiness to me just not being able to look at them. My God, the things that were portrayed there. I remember this painting of a teenage girl posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, but there was this gargantuan silhouette in the background. I had the strangest feeling that I knew this girl from somewhere, but chalk this up to my nerves. I was entranced by all of these images until Elijah's voice pulled me out of it. "God, this guy's a freak," he whispered. I was glad that at least one of us wasn't too taken aback by what we had found here. The painting that we were looking for was supposed to be an old lady sitting next to a vase filled with tulips. I made sure to scan every painting in the faint hope that it would be displayed in the hallway. As you can probably guess, there was no such luck. As we made our way through the hallway, there was an open archway leading into what I assumed was the living room. The place was big indeed. There were 2 doors on either side. The living room's contemporary furnishings stood in contrast with the esoteric artwork that filled the walls. I took slight glances at the paintings, not wanting to look at them for too long. I don't think I've looked at most paintings for more than 5 seconds. Some of these images still haunt me today. One such was displayed right above his fireplace and freaked me out beyond belief. I just stood there, gaping at it. The painting depicted an old woman standing on a crossroads looking up at the sky. Her eyes displayed madness, and there was a wide smile on her face. The sky was a mixture of red with black clouds, and there seemed to be looming shapes between them. In the sky flew a wild array of impossible creatures. They were a brownish and yellow color, and some were dragging people in their gigantic claws. "Move your fucking ass, man!" The familiar voice of Elijah pulled me out of it again. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "but don't you think these paintings are just weird as fuck?" "Scared of some paint, huh?" he said, but I could see he didn't like looking at them any more than I did. "Let's just find the creep's bedroom so you can stay guard. Let's check the rooms in here." We had no lock on the ground floor, so we took the stairway up. We came out into a long hallway with more doors on either side, and one at the far end slightly ajar. I went to examine it, and saw the old man sleeping in his bed, illuminated by a glimmer of moonlight. "Okay, good," Elijah whispered. "You stay here and keep an eye on him. If he wakes up, just threaten to hit him with a flashlight. I'll check in with you every 10 minutes. I checked my watch. It was 2:30. Elijah checked the rooms in the hallway, while I kept my eyes on the old man. After a while, Elijah came out of the last room and seemed a bit confused. More than confused. He seemed broken and in a state of shock. I approached him and asked him what was wrong. "Everything is fine. Just make sure that freak doesn't wake up. I'm going to look upstairs." I really wanted to believe everything was fine indeed, but the look in his eyes told me otherwise. That was the last time I would ever see Elijah alive. Time seemed to have frozen. As I stood there, trying not to freak out about how insane this all was, the old woman from the painting kept popping into my mind. I'm going to try to explain the next part the best I can without sounding like a complete nutjob. The thing is, whenever I thought about the painting of the old woman on the crossroad, I could never remember the painting itself. It seemed like some kind of memory, like I was standing in front of that woman, watching everything and everyone move around me. The flying creatures screaming and hissing, the people walking around and ignoring the monstrosities around them, and that woman laughing at me, almost like she was mocking me for not understanding what was happening. This happened every time I tried to remember that damned painting. Even now as I'm writing this. I must have gone in a trance there. What the fuck is up with me tonight? I thought. I usually wasn't like this, especially during a job. I felt my heart stopping for a second as I checked my watch. It was only 2:55. Where the hell was Elijah? My knees almost gave out as I made my second discovery. The old man wasn't in his bed anymore. In a state of panic, I shone my flashlight in his room, and it was completely empty. I didn't know what to do. My instincts told me to get the hell out of there, but I didn't want to leave Elijah behind. I snuck through the hall and up the stairs, opened up the first door and found myself in a library. Again, the strange paintings were all over the room, only this time, they seemed to be telling a story. In the painting closest to the door, there was a child standing in an open field, hands raised to the sky, and clouds opening up. Behind him stood the old woman, her hands on his shoulder, like she was guiding him. In the second painting was a gigantic UFO descending down towards the child. The next painting filled me with dread. There was the same child, but taller, in an alien landscape, dancing with these creatures around a makeshift campfire. The things must have been 3 meters in height compared to the child, and their limbs were positioned in poses that were all but natural. The old woman was there as well, watching from a distance, that same insane look in her eyes. In the last painting, the child was all grown up, standing in the same landscape surrounded by the children. They seemed to be smiling and raising their hands. But if you looked closer, those smiles didn't seem real at all. It was like an expression of pure panic in their eyes. Far away in the background stood the gargantuan shape that I had seen before, only in more detail now. It stood at least 80 meters in height and had a snake-like body. The thing had no legs but rested on its tail and hands. Its muscled arms were long and disproportionate to the rest of its body. There was an outline of its wings folded on its back. I felt the grip of these paintings coming over me again and left that room. I stood very still, listening for any form of sound. It must have been my imagination, but I could hear slow breathing all around me. I wanted to get out of that house as fast as I could, but I didn't want to leave Elijah behind. Lord knows he always came back for me in bad situations. At that moment, I heard Elijah calling out my name from underneath me. I ran downstairs and barged into the last room Elijah had come out of. I found myself in some sort of study room. There was a desk at the side and an armchair in the middle of the room with a coffee table next to it. If you were to sit in the chair, you'd have perfect view of the painting that hung neatly in the middle of the wall. It displayed an island with a big pyramid in the middle. In front of the pyramid was a lake. People were swimming in that lake whilst others stood around watching. Two of those people seemed so familiar to me. One was a child who was standing in front of the lake. There were tears running down his face. The other was a young man looking from a distance at the scenery, his eyes filled with fear. Suddenly, it hit me where I had seen the crying child before. It had been on the news for weeks. The child had been abducted while playing in the forest and was never seen or heard from again. I remember vividly because of the mother's heartbreaking plea on the evening news begging her son's kidnappers to return her child to her. It was because of this that my mind drifted back to the girl in the painting of the Eiffel Tower. She disappeared while her parents were visiting Europe, only she looked years older in the painting than at the time of her abduction. I shivered at this realization. None of this could be real, right? How could such things even exist? How can light still exist while such darkness opposes it? There was a nameplate under it that read, D. Paradiso de. I almost felt the breeze of the island when a voice pulled me out of it again, only this time, it wasn't the familiar voice of Elijah. I turned around. The old man stood in the door opening. I froze with fear at the sight of him. At first glance, he was just a regular old man, but there was something about him, something sinister. He placed himself in front of me, smiled, and asked, "You like my works?" He had a proud look in his eyes, as if he was expecting me to applaud him. I tried to speak, but no words came out. The man beckoned me to sit down in the chair, and I obeyed him without any question. There seemed to be static in his voice as he spoke. "Ah, where are my manners? It's been so long since I had guests. I sometimes forget the formalities. Can I offer you a drink?" he said, as he smiled politely at me. Hearing those words and watching him stand in front of me filled me with more fear than I had ever experienced in my life. It took all my courage to ask him two simple questions. "Where's my friend? Who were these people in the paintings?" The old man chuckled. "I'm afraid your friend has grown weary." He decided to let his eyes rest for a bit. "As for the people in the paintings, you can consider them as my private collection. I was like you once, an ignorant child who didn't understand the universe, but she showed me the way." He turned around and looked at the painting of the island. I saw this as my chance. I got out of the chair and tried to make a run for it. Before I knew what was happening, the old man had grabbed me by the arm and made me sit down again. "What's the rush? You come in my house in the middle of the night, awaken me from my slumber, and don't even have the manners to sit down for a nice chat?" His words were cold and stern. I could feel his strong grip around my arm long after he let go of me. "I'm sorry. Let me just take my friend and we'll leave immediately." He looked at me with disgust and started hissing these strange words. "Nagazaleme, tejon, or ke futake, Anshihila Tekong. Those words are still burned inside my mind. I started feeling dizzy and felt I was drifting away. I could have closed my eyes for more than a second, but when I opened them up again, I was standing on the island. I looked behind me and saw the pyramid. It mesmerized me. My body felt so heavy, and all I wanted to do was lay in the grass and let myself drift away. I nearly did, until the young man who I recognized earlier in the painting started to yell at me. "Wake up, you idiot!" He yelled. It was Elijah, only he seemed 10 years younger. None of this made sense. "Where are we?" I asked him, fighting against that suppressing feeling of sleep. "It doesn't matter! You need to wake the fuck up and get out of that house!" He screamed. I found myself closer to that warm embrace of sleep. As I closed my eyes, his fist came towards. His punch felt like a hammer, hitting my face, but when it connected, I was back in front of the old man. His sinister look was gone and was replaced with utter shock. "How'd you get out?" I used this moment of confusion and adrenaline and kicked the old bastard right in his chest. He stumbled backwards and I made a dash for it. I ran out of the house and kept running towards civilization until I threw up from exhaustion. The guilt I felt for leaving Elijah in that cursed place never subsided. Weeks later, I saw a missing person article in the newspaper with Elijah's picture, only his name was displayed as Morgan Fletcher. Guess I never knew him as well as I thought. I've thought about going back to that cursed house ever since. 35 years later, I'm still thinking that. 10 years ago, I got as far as the parking lot, but fear always got the better of me. I never went to the police. There was no way in hell they would have believed me. I would have taken this story to the grave, but yesterday, I saw a sad news report of 3 teenage kids that were last seen hanging around the area of the house and disappeared without a trace. I have the worst feeling that the old man is behind it. Curse our foolish minds for ever thinking we were going to find such riches without paying a price for it. Seeing Nicole that day was like spotting a snow leopard in the wild. It had been 44 years since I last saw her face, and there she was, sitting at the end of the bar like she never left. I nearly pinched myself in disbelief. A Christmas miracle. She looked as stunning as ever, wrapped in an expensive mink coat and black leather boots. Her hair was shorter and gray, but it was undoubtedly her. I stared down at my drink, contemplating whether I should approach her or not. We were old people now, on the back end of our lives. What would I even say? So much time had passed. Curiosity got the better of me, as I meandered over to her, beer in hand. "Nicole? Is that you?" She didn't look up from her phone. My face felt hot with embarrassment. My fight-or-flight response screamed flight. "Nicole?" I repeated, gently tapping her shoulder. She looked up and we locked eyes, those lush green eyes that had captured a place in my heart all those years. "Eddie? Oh my God, Eddie!" She hugged me, and I felt my anxiety melt away. "How long has it been?" I still had hair the last time we met, so it must be ages. Nicole nearly spat out her drink. "You haven't changed one bit, Eddie. In this bar, it's almost exactly how I remembered it." She wasn't lying. McKaylee's was a spitting image of its old self. It was a family bar that had been kept in the family, passed down from generation to generation, dating back to my father's time. It was not the hippest establishment anymore, but it was one that I cherished. It was my tradition to sneak out to this pub on December 24th every year for a quick pint. It gave me a chance to reflect on my life, and momentarily escape the hecticness of the holiday season. I think deep down, and secretly, that I would spot Nicole here again someday. "Do you remember when we stole Jerry's dad's truck and drove it right here? We were begging Catherine for a drink." I chuckled. How could I forget the desperation? It's owned by her son David now. That kind of thing would never slide anymore. We both laughed as All I Want for Christmas played on the jukebox in the background. Besides a couple of stragglers, the bar was dead. People off with their families, enjoying the festivities. What about this spot in particular? As I pointed above her to the mistletoe hanging from the support beam, I scoped out this spot specifically back in the day, back when I still had game. Nicole's face turned a bright pink. Oh, I'm old, but I still remember. We exchanged pleasantries as I ordered another round from David. She was passing through to spend Christmas at her daughter's place in a nearby city. She filled me in on her life. She had 2 daughters from 2 different marriages and 2 grandkids, 1 boy and 1 girl. She pulled out pictures from her purse as we smiled and admired their cuteness. Geez, I've been talking your ear off, Eddie. How about yourself? What have you been up to all these years? Me? Oh, not much, really. I never left. I own all the Rutterson pharmacies in town. Got myself a wife, Karen, and a white picket fence. We had a daughter, Mackenzie, and she has 2 granddaughters that we spoiled to death, Chloe and Veronica. It was my turn for show and tell. She smiled as she examined the pictures closely. We are planning on spending Christmas at Mackenzie's with the little ones tomorrow. Oh my goodness, they are all so adorable. How old are they, if you don't mind me asking, and what race? They look so beautiful. Chloe is 4, and Veronica will be 2 in a few weeks. Mackenzie married a Filipino fellow, so they are my little halfies, I joked. Well, they look extremely exotic, so precious. There was an awkward pause, as I mustered the courage to ask what had been eating away at me for the past 44 years. Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Nicole stared at her empty drink, rolling the ice cubes around. She paused and took a deep breath. I never wanted to leave. I had to leave. Nicole went on to explain that her father had had an episode. I always knew about her father's anger issues. Nicole would wear long-sleeve shirts to hide the bruising some days, when it got bad. That night was the pinnacle of the abuse. Her mother was almost beaten to death when he passed out from his drunken stupor. Nicole and her mother had fled town. The jovial atmosphere turned solemn as I processed what I just heard. I just wish you would have called me once you were settled. It really screwed me up, Nicole, for a long time. I'm really sorry, Eddie. I was young. She put her hand on mine for a moment. I was terrified he would find us. You know how quickly word spreads in this town. We both stared out the window, watching heavy snowflakes fall down from the heavens. I should go. Nicole grabbed the bill before I could reach it. I'm sorry, Nicole. Please stay for one more? She got up and paid her tab at the register. She came back with a troubled look on her face. I may be really out of line here, Eddie, but I would be kicking myself if I didn't at least try. She took a deep breath and handed me a folded napkin. I wrote down the address where I'll be staying tonight and my number. I leave in the morning, but I would love for you to come by tonight. I shifted uneasily in my chair, as the magnitude of the question weighed heavily on me. You don't have to answer now. Just give me a call. She gave me a kiss on the cheek and left, the snow leopard escaping back into the mountains. We had a Christmas Eve dinner at Mackenzie's that night, which I was barely present for. Thoughts were racing through my mind from earlier at the bar. I couldn't help but imagine what could have been with Nicole, had she never left. The chemistry was still there, I could feel it, running electric through my veins. It was a feeling I hadn't felt with my wife Karen, not to that level. I still loved her and the life we had built, but if I was going to be honest with myself, it wasn't the same. At the same time, this was insane. I'm an old man. Had this been a couple years ago, after she left, maybe things would have been different. But I had responsibilities now, lifelong commitments forged with my wife and children. When my wife Karen was cutting the cake, I snuck out to the garage to make the call. Hello? Hi, Nicole. It's Eddie. Eddie, I'm so happy you called. Listen, Nicole, I cut in, pausing a moment to think about how I wanted to phrase things. I don't think it's a good idea for me to come over. I hope you understand. There was a long pause that I rushed to fill. I have a family now, Nicole. It was really nice seeing you again, though. I hope I see you again around town sometime soon. But I thought you wanted to rekindle what we had. I could feel the loneliness and sadness in her voice. I never said that, Nicole. I had just really missed seeing you. Another long pause. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that, Eddie, Nicole said, sobbing. I thought it was never too late for love. I guess I was wrong. Nicole, you know what? Maybe I'll stop by Mackenzie's tomorrow morning before I leave. A nice little Christmas surprise. See what Chloe and Veronica think about their granddad seducing a former lover? My heartbeat sped 100 miles a minute. Regret washed over me for even starting a conversation with her in the first place. Nicole, I don't know what you think happened here today, but it was nothing. Just two old friends running into each other at the bar. Why are you doing this? That comment set her off. Friends? She cried, the sobbing getting louder. Well, I'll see you tomorrow then, friend. 222 Bridgestone Boulevard? How did she know the address? Nicole! Nicole disconnected the call, leaving me a stressed, confused mess. I called back 2 times, which went straight to voicemail. I did not sleep that night, anticipating Christmas Day chaos, but Nicole never showed up. We had a splendid day with the grandchildren, lots of laughs and gift-giving to be had. Part of me was still very weary, afraid of what Nicole was capable of doing or saying to uproot my family, but she never made an appearance until I turned on the evening news. This is Channel 19 breaking news. In a scene right out of a movie, local county sheriffs arrest the Black Widow killer Courtney Dolling, wanted for the murders of former husbands. New York City entrepreneur David Dolling and career criminal Alonzo Harrow, along with a slew of other charges including child trafficking. She had been known to police for decades, going by many aliases. In an epic turn of events, she was tracked down by police at a small-town motel in Hollows-Vale on Christmas Day. More information coming in by the minute here, as police begin to unravel this Christmas Day miracle. The footage on the screen was Nicole, in her mink fur coat, being carried away by law enforcement. My jaw dropped to the floor. I was astounded at what I was witnessing. I would have never imagined that woman I loved so long ago could have been entangled in something so sinister, and to be so close to such evil, at such a magical time of the year. I decided in that moment to give up on my Michaeli's Christmas Eve tradition. I figured traditions should be celebrated with people you love, not with people that you never knew. I won a storage unit in an auction. A storage unit that was once owned by an eccentric private investigator who dealt with the paranormal and the occult. The unit is filled to the brim with his case files. Many investigations remain open. This is just one of them. Specifics such as town names have been changed for everyday safety. What I have found in these files is truly disturbing, if not outright dangerous, and I would be complicit if some would-be detective tried to pick up these investigations where they've left off. Leave that to me. Case number 2020-189. Type, missing persons. Clients, Jonathan and Rebecca Reinhardt. Location, Holyoke Township, Pennsylvania. Case status, open. The Hornet newspaper. Judith Reinhardt, 17 years old, has been reported missing by her parents 1 week ago. Local authorities are confounded by the disappearance but assure the public that there is no evidence of foul play. If you have any knowledge of Judith's whereabouts, please contact the Pennsylvania State Police. Rachel Zeller, childhood friend. No, she didn't tell me she was leaving. We all knew she would. Her parents were crazy strict, and they fought all the time. A few of the flights were so loud the cops got called. Judy was the rebellious type. This is the girl that yanked the fire alarm during exam week in the 8th grade. The same Judy that put a rock through Principal Schaefer's windshield. She was bumming out cigarettes in the girls' bathroom in middle school. Black fingernails, fishnet stockings. I'm sure you know the type. Listen, she told me not to tell anyone, but, well, I guess maybe I'm a little worried. She mentioned Holyoke. It's a few miles west of here, and I've heard some scary stuff about that town. That might be a good place to start. Pennsylvania State Police Report. Upon arrival, I made contact with the complainants, Jonathan and Rebecca Reinhardt, parents of Judith Reinhardt. They reported that they had not seen their daughter in 24 hours following a verbal argument regarding curfews. They consented to a search of the home, and I checked Judith's room. Nothing was in disarray, and there were no signs of a disturbance. Numerous articles of clothing, as well as a suitcase, were reported missing from the room. At this time, nothing appears suspicious. I issued a county-wide ATL and entered the juvenile into NCIC as a runaway, nothing further. Excerpt from a local tour pamphlet. Holyoke Township is a borough in Potter County, Pennsylvania, 3 miles west of Mayfield Borough. According to the United States Census Bureau, the township has a total area of 0.6 square miles. The town's elevation is 567 feet above sea level. Average monthly temperatures range from 28 degrees Fahrenheit in January to 75 degrees Fahrenheit in July. Several properties were constructed in the late 18th century and have been labeled historic sites by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. From the diary of Judith Reinhardt. They just don't get it. Maybe I don't want to go to college. Maybe I don't want to be a fucking wage slave and spawn a bunch of little brats that will grow up to hate me. Maybe I don't want to be like everyone else. Maybe I don't want to be them. Maybe I have my own plans. Maybe I found something to believe in. I'm leaving first chance I get, and I'm never looking back. Depicted below was a sketch of a series of bizarre symbols with no explanation. Judith Sturbank, mechanic, Mayfield resident. Yeah, I seen that girl from the paper. Judith something. She was here with a guy. He drove this big V8 Thunderbird. A real look-at-me kind of car. Sweet ride, though. He pumped a few gallons of gas and bought her a soda. The guy, he made me nervous. Slicked back, oily hair with a bulge at his waistband. I'd put good money down that it was a gun. It was his eyes that bothered me the most. Bothered me more than that gun. They left going the direction of Holyoke. No telling if that's where they went or not. Yeah, I let the cops know. I don't think they're losing any sleep over it, though. Besides, Judith whatever seemed fine. Happy, even. Didn't look like no kidnapping to me. Investigator field notes. It seems fairly obvious that Judith Reinhardt was not abducted. Efforts to infiltrate Holyoke have thus been far unsuccessful. Town residents are tight-lipped and won't discuss the sudden influx of young people, nor will they discuss the goings-ons of the town. Further efforts to follow. Sally Maymark, former resident of Mayfield Township. Late at night, if you listen close, you'd hear it. Chanting. They sing hymns under the moonlight. Sometimes, if you listened really close, you'd hear screaming. My husband said I was imagining things, but his hearing went to shit in the army. I know what I heard. Cops never did anything about it, though. They didn't even go into Holyoke anymore. It's like those no-go zones you'd hear about in those big cities. I don't know what I pay taxes for. Living next to Holyoke, it's like the devil's breathing on the back of your neck. I'm glad I moved and never looked back. Action 19 News. One local official, under condition of anonymity, reports that young people are flocking to Holyoke and joining an alleged cult. One source describes satanic rituals, cannibalism, drug use, orgies, and worse. Residents of Holyoke deny the cult's existence. As of Thursday, reporters have been barred from entering the town and have been met with hostility and aggression by locals, some of them brandishing weapons. And now, for the weekend weather. Remy Roberts, former Holyoke resident. Everyone felt it. When you first move in, I mean. It turned into a kind of icebreaker. You feel that? Yeah, we all felt it. The way a rat feels when they catch the scent of cat. There's always that something off. Something not quite right about Holyoke and the people that live there. It wears off, though. Folks in Holyoke ain't no different than you and me. Cults? Cannibalism? Satanic rituals? Heavens no. The media's nothing but lies these days. John Sturbank, mechanic, Mayfield resident. Holyoke ain't normal. If you need to get someplace, you take the long way round. I only been there once on a dare, and once was enough. Trees crowd the road like nature was taking the place back. It's suffocating. Shadows painted so black under the moon your headlights are damn near useless. And that weren't the worst part. Worst part was feeling them watch you. This is the sort of town you see in the movies where you lose a cell reception and catch a flat tire. Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of place. If you know what I mean. Rumor says they'll be building up some kind of wall around the whole place to keep folks out. Or maybe to keep folks in. VHS tape entitled V&C Grocery Security Camera Number 4. A figure emerges from the shadows and creeps alongside the store. Its arms and legs are too long. The strides are too wide, and it appears wholly unnatural in its bizarre movements. Further forensic examination is required to determine what type of technical glitch would cause such a distortion of the pictured individual. The figure looks inside the store, hands cupped to the glass, and then continues walking south and out of view of the camera. The quality of the video is imperfect. Richard Spence, Code Enforcement. Those lunatics build a wooden wall like a palisade. Pointed tips and everything, like some kind of medieval war camp. Now, there's only one way in and one way out. They have armed guards at the gates, a bunch of wackos with old shotguns demanding IDs. When I showed up there asking for permits, one of those nut jobs pointed a gun at me. You know what the cops told me? Avoid Holyoke. That was their advice. Unbelievable. Judith, what? Never heard of her. There were some rough-looking women there. No telling if that was her. Redacted. FBI agent, digital forensics. No, that video wasn't altered or distorted. Whatever the thing is, it's almost 8 feet tall. Never seen anything like it. Reverend Jonathan Hoke, preacher, Holyoke resident. The wall. Oh, that's just our eccentric mayor looking to keep us safe. He's adorable, really. And it makes sense when you think about it. We don't trust these corrupt cops. We police our own. We control the flow in and out of town. Safer that way. Perfect example. Old Ramford. He up and killed himself the other night. The cops forced their way into town and they're framing it like some kind of murder. Symbols painted in blood like it's some kind of Manson cult? Unbelievable. Give me a break. USB thumb drive. Files encrypted. Requires passcode. Pennsylvania State Police report, heavily redacted. On blank at 02:52 hours, I was dispatched to this place for a report of possible burglary in progress. Upon arrival, I observed signs of forced entry with the front door slightly ajar. I, alongside Officer So-and-so, cleared the residence. Upon entering the master bedroom, I observed a motionless shape underneath the blood-soaked blanket. The entirety of the room was spattered with blood. Removing the blankets, I observed the victim, obviously deceased. Large chunks of flesh had been torn away from the body. These wounds were roughly cut and resembled bites. The facial region was damaged to a degree that a visual identification was not possible. A large complex symbol was painted above the headboard. It had appeared as though it had been painted by the victim's blood. Bloody footprints led to the east window of the bedroom. The footsteps are unnaturally far apart, indicating an abnormally tall suspect. See crime scene photographs. Ann Barrow, expert in the occult. No, these symbols mean nothing to me. I've never seen anything quite like them. As for the creature you've described, several of them can fit the criteria. What would narrow it down is the method of summoning or perhaps its mannerisms. Sally Maymark, former resident of Mayfield Township. Of course I still have friends back in town. They tell me that these people from Holyoke, they go riding at night. Dozens of cars taken to the streets. Engines roaring under the moon. Teenagers howling at the moon like a pack of wolves as they tear down the roads at dangerous speeds. Decent folks stay inside and keep their doors locked. The gun shops are out of stock everywhere. People are scared. Untitled cassette tapes. Detective. So, you understand your rights as I read them to you. Suspect. Sure. I guess, yeah. You're okay to talk to us? I got nothing to hide, Static. Tell me about Holyoke. What about it? Tell me about what happened that night. The car rides, the other rumors, you've heard them. Tell me about it. I want to... Hold on, what are you... Inaudible words, banging, grunting, and struggling can be heard. Stop! Give me your hands! Give... Gun! 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 Gunshot. Fuck! What the fuck? Door opening. Unknown male. Holy shit! Are you okay? Detective. Didn't anyone check this asshole for a gun? Did he just shoot himself? Fuck! From the diary of Judith Reinhardt. Holyoke is a wonderful place, but the lotteries can be scary. Exhilarating, but scary. Johnny's number was called last week. He told me he'd be brave, but he cried when they called him. He tried to run. They shot him in the back before he even made it to the wall. Better to die with a little dignity, I say. We all know what we signed up for. Reverend Jonathan Hoke, preacher, Holyoke resident. They continue to violate our rights, but we stand strong. If they push us out of Holyoke, well, just move and form an even stronger community further in the wilderness. It matters not to us, but it's all lies, all of it. We're normal people. This is a normal town. Sally Maymark, former resident of Mayfield Township. The latest stories, surely just imaginations running rampant. Tales of creatures stalking in the night? Demons. The same night that they'll go riding. Silhouettes that are too tall and too fast moving through the night. It sounds silly. I know, but these people I trust. I don't know what to think anymore. Investigator field notes. Attempted entry at Holyoke at 1400 hours. Met with armed residents. More rumors of a tall creature stalking nearby towns at night. Surveillance operation planned for 0300 hours tomorrow. John Hoke remains the sole resident of Holyoke willing to speak with me. However, I do not trust him. There's something in his eyes, something dark and violent. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.